Netanyahu vows there'll be no Palestinian state as he approves fast-tracked West Bank settlement expansion. The UN General Assembly endorses New York Declaration on a two-state solution for Palestine. Egypt condemns Israeli strike on Qatar at the UN and backs Doha's response and mediation efforts. Good evening and welcome. Israel's Prime Minister has vowed there will never be a Palestinian state as he signed off on fast-track settlement expansion in the West Bank. Benjamin Netanyahu approved construction in the E1 corridor, a project that would split the West Bank and sever East Jerusalem, Bethlehem and Ramallah. The Palestinian Authority condemned the move as illegal, warning it destroys the two-state solution and threatens regional stability. Meanwhile, the UN General Assembly has overwhelmingly endorsed the New York Declaration on a two-state solution for Palestine. The resolution passed with 142 votes in favor, 10 against and 12 abstentions, despite strong opposition from Israel and the United States. The Palestinian Foreign Ministry welcomed the outcome, thanking nations that supported it and noting the declaration now becomes an official UN document. Washington's envoy said the US opposes international recognition of a Palestinian state, while insisting the Gaza war would end if Hamas disarms and frees detainees. Egypt has begun preparations to open a second relief camp for displaced families in Gaza City. The Egyptian Committee for the Relief of the People of Gaza said the new camp will expand on the first, which has been providing shelter and basic services. Officials said the move reaffirms Egypt's continued commitment to supporting Palestinians during the ongoing crisis. Ireland says it will not take part in next year's Eurovision Song Contest if Israel is allowed to participate. The broadcaster RTE called Israel's inclusion unconscionable given the Gaza war, which local health officials say has killed more than 64,000 people. Israel, a long-time member of the European Broadcasting Union, insists on joining as usual. The EBU said it understands the concerns as several members raised objections during a July meeting. Russia and Belarus have launched a large-scale joint military exercise spanning land and sea. The Russian Defense Ministry said the Zapad 2025 drills began today across both countries and in the Baltic and Barents Seas. The show of force comes at a highly tense moment in the Ukraine war, just 2 days after Poland shot down suspected Russian drones in its airspace. Moscow stressed the exercise had been well planned before the drone incident. Poland has shut its border with Belarus in response to the joint Russian-Belarusian military exercises. Interior Minister Marcin Kiewinski said the Zapad drills are practicing aggressive warfare scenarios against Poland and the EU. Only 2 crossings had remained open before the closure. Belarus earlier summoned Poland's charge d'affaires, calling the move on them an abuse of its geographic position that caused significant difficulties. The Kremlin says joint Russian-Belarusian military drills near Poland are not directed against any country. Spokesman Dmitry Peskov said the exercises, starting today near the Polish border, are routine and focus on coordination between the 2 allies. He also dismissed European concern over Russian drones shot down in Poland, saying Moscow would make no further comment beyond the Defense Ministry's statement. Meanwhile, the US President Donald Trump says Russia's drone incursion into Poland may have been a mistake.
What's your reaction to Russian drone incursion into Poland?
Could have been a mistake. Could have been a mistake. But regardless, I'm not happy about anything having to do with that whole situation. But hopefully it's going to come to an end.
President Trump there. France will deploy fighter jets to help Poland secure its airspace after suspected Russian drone incursions. President Emmanuel Macron announced that 3 Rafale jets will be sent, saying Europe's security is France's top priority. He stressed Paris will not give in to what he called Russia's growing intimidation, following drones shot down over Polish territory this week. Poland's Prime Minister has urged NATO allies not to ignore suspected Russian drone incursions into Polish airspace. After a Security Council meeting, Donald Tusk said that Warsaw was certain Moscow was behind the attack, calling it uncomfortable for those seeking normalization with Russia. He noted support from France's Emmanuel Macron and Britain's Keir Starmer, and said Poland will work with Ukraine on counter-drone technology.
No to trudno udawać, że nic się nie stało. I mam nadzieję, że nikt z naszych sojuszników nie będzie udawał.
Poland's defense minister says NATO has proven its unity after Russian drones violated Polish airspace. Addressing Parliament, Władysław Kosinski-Kamysz said the alliance passed the test, resisting Russian pressure. He cited concrete pledges from allies, the Netherlands speeding up Patriot battery deliveries, the Czech Republic sending Mi-17 helicopters and troops, and France and Britain deploying Rafale jets and Eurofighters to secure NATO's eastern flank. Ukraine's president has urged allies to rethink their air defense strategies after Russian drone incursions into Poland. Speaking in Kyiv alongside Finland's President Volodymyr Zelensky, he said Ukraine is ready to share its experience in fending off Russian strikes. He noted Ukraine's multi-layered approach from machine guns to advanced missiles, arguing systems like the US Patriot are too costly to counter Russia's cheap drones.
І нікому не допоможуть. Це суто зброя проти балістичних ракет, передусім. 50-60 ракет сьогодні виробляє Сполучені Штати Америки, головний виробник в світі. Цих ракет.
The Kremlin has brushed off European condemnation over Russian drones shot down in Polish airspace. Poland, Ukraine and Lithuania called Wednesday's incursion a deliberate and unprecedented provocation. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said Moscow would not add further comment, noting the Defense Ministry had already issued a statement on the matter. Qatar's Prime Minister has welcomed the UN Security Council's condemnation of Israel's strike in Doha. Prime Minister Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani said the strike hit a district crowded with schools, embassies and homes. He also warned the attack undermines international order and stressed Qatar's right to defend its sovereignty and security. Qatari Prime Minister further assured the UN Security Council that his country will continue its diplomatic role in mediating a ceasefire in Gaza. President Donald Trump is said to be frustrated with Benjamin Netanyahu over Israel's strike in Doha. Politico reports Trump suspects the Israeli leader is deliberately undermining Gaza ceasefire talks. Sources say every time progress is made toward releasing hostages, Netanyahu orders assassinations or escalations that derail the process. According to the report, the White House has been working to calm the Qatari authorities, whose top leaders have used words such as barbaric to describe the Israeli move. China has strongly condemned Israel's strike on Hamas officials in the Qatari capital Doha. At a UN Security Council meeting, China's UN envoy Fu Kong said the September 9th attack flagrantly violated Qatar's sovereignty, international law and the UN Charter. He stressed Qatar's vital role as a mediator in Gaza ceasefire talks, saying its peace efforts are widely recognized. Fu noted the strike came just 2 days after Washington announced a new ceasefire proposal it said Israel had accepted.
不负责任、蓄意破坏谈判的行为十分恶劣。中方对袭击事件可能导致地区局势进一步紧张升级深感忧虑。必须指出，这一事件的发生同个别域外国家 在中东问题上立场长期失衡脱不开关系。
Egypt has condemned Israel's strike on Qatar, telling the United Nations it undermines mediation efforts for a Gaza ceasefire. Speaking at the Security Council, Egypt's envoy Osama Abdul Khalek stressed that Qatar is not alone and Egypt supports any measures it takes in response.
Mr. President, we reaffirm our position to stand firmly with our brothers in the state of Qatar and to support any measures Qatar takes in defense of its national security. We call upon the Council to immediately take a decisive decision to deter Israel and stop its war against the Gaza Strip and the countries of the region, and to confront the state terrorism by Israel before Israel sends the region into a regional war that no one can afford. The time has come for the international community to have a unified position that is firm against Israel and oblige Israel to abide by the international law, renounce violence and embrace peace as a path. Qatar is not alone. Your Excellency Sheikh Mohammed, Egypt and national security are all at the stake, and thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Egypt for the statement. The representative of Pakistan.
Now, the United Nations says Egypt is playing a central role in efforts to secure a Gaza ceasefire alongside Qatar and the United States. In an emergency Security Council meeting on Israel's strike in Doha, UN officials said the attack violated Qatar's sovereignty and shocked the world. They warned violence is spreading across the region, threatening wider instability. The UN stressed Egyptian and Qatari mediation, backed by Washington, is vital to calming the crisis and urged Israel to respect diplomatic efforts rather than undermine them.
The President assured the Emir, as well as the Prime Minister of Qatar, that such a thing would not happen again on their soil.
We fully condemn the strikes on Qatar.
Israeli media says Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu dismissed suggestions that Egypt could accept Palestinians deported from Gaza. In talks over a military plan to expel Gazans by land, sea and air starting next month, Intelligence Minister Gira Gemalil proposed pressuring Egypt to take in refugees under international conventions. Netanyahu reportedly replied there was no chance of convincing Cairo, underscoring Egypt's firm opposition to any forced displacement of Palestinians.
לא תקום מדינה פלסטינית, ואכן לא תקום מדינה פלסטינית. המקום הזה הוא שלנו.
Now, Ukraine's president says he has discussed joint weapons production and new sanctions on Russia with a U.S. envoy. Volodymyr Zelensky met U.S. envoy Keith Kellogg in Kyiv, saying talks focused on drones, arms production and deeper bilateral agreements. He said Ukraine expects a positive response from Washington and stressed the need for stronger sanctions and tariffs against Russia to pave the way for peace and security guarantees. Sweden has announced over $7 billion in new military aid for Ukraine over the next 2 years. Defence Minister Paul Johnson said 70 billion crowns will fund arms purchases, including more Archer artillery systems already in use by Ukrainian forces. He also voiced solidarity with Poland after suspected Russian drones violated its airspace, saying Sweden is ready to contribute military assets if needed.
Insatserna och vikten utav det här kriget och att det är Ukraina som är framgångsrikt och inte Ryssland, det är helt avgörande också för vår egen säkerhet. Partier och också informerat oppositionen om det här paketet. Det 20:e stödpaketet det bidrar både till stöd till Ukraina på lång och kort sikt. Det är sammanlagt 9,2 miljarder i storlek på det. Det kommer den absoluta huvuddelen det kommer från.
Now to the United States, and Utah's governor says a suspect is in custody for the killing of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Governor Spencer Cox confirmed today that 21-year-old Tyler Robinson was arrested after implying to a family friend he had carried out the murder in Orem. Investigators say relatives reported Robinson had recently become more political and often spoke critically of Kirk. Militants have killed at least 64 people in 2 coordinated attacks in eastern Congo. Officials said the deadliest assault was on a funeral in Ntoyo, in Lubero territory, where 46 people were massacred. Another attack in Fotodu, near Oika in Beni, left 18 dead, mostly farmers. The Allied Democratic Forces linked to Daesh are blamed for some of the region's bloodiest violence in recent months. Kathmandu is calm after days of anti-graft protests that left 34 people dead and forced the resignation of Nepal's Prime Minister. Soldiers patrolled quiet streets today with charred vehicles and debris still visible across the capital. Former Chief Justice Sushila Karki is expected to become interim Prime Minister, that's according to sources. The unrest, Nepal's worst in years, was sparked by a social media ban and subsided only after KP Sharma Oli stepped down as Prime Minister. Protests in Ecuador have ended in clashes with riot police as opposition President Daniel Noboa's planned referendum grows. Thousands from indigenous, labor and educational groups marched in Quito on Thursday, accusing the president of authoritarian rule and neglecting urgent issues like unemployment and medicine shortages. Police fired tear gas to disperse crowds near the city centre. On the same day, Noboa led a counter-march in Guayaquil defending his security policies and blaming drug-linked gangs for a surge in violence. Brazil's Supreme Court has convicted former President Bolsonaro of plotting a coup to stay in power after losing the 2022 election. Justice Alexandre de Moraes said a majority of the court found Bolsonaro guilty of leading an armed criminal group trying to abolish democratic rule and organizing a coup d'etat. He was sentenced to 27 years and 3 months, including nearly 25 years in prison, making him the first former Brazilian leader convicted of attacking democracy.
Assim, a procedência da detenção punitiva em relação a ele também é imperiosa.
A concordância da Procuradoria-Geral da República. O acordo de colaboração premiada foi devidamente homologado por esse...
Com essa apresentação do voto, concluo que estou acompanhando.
South Sudan's first Vice President Riek Machar has been charged with murder, treason and crimes against humanity. The Justice Minister said the charges stem from Machar's alleged role in White Army militia attacks on federal forces in Nasir last March. The case deepens divisions with President Salva Kiir's camp, rivals in a civil war that killed 400,000 people. Machar, under house arrest since March, has drawn international calls for release amid fears the crisis could reignite conflict.
The White Army operated under the command and influence of certain leaders of the Sudan's People Liberation Movement Army in opposition. SPLM on the 3rd March 2025.
A UAE company is turning humidity into safe drinking water using energy-efficient technology. As its Abu Dhabi plant, Mahawa bottles around 40,000 litres a day through atmospheric water generation, condensing moisture from the air. The firm also supplies homes and offices with mobile dispensers. CEO Michael Ruttman says the process yields up to 5 litres of water per kilowatt of energy, offering a sustainable solution in one of the world's most water-scarce regions. Greenpeace staged a dramatic protest in Berlin against threats facing the Amazon rainforest. A rainforest fire light show, a rainforest fire light show lit up the Brandenburg Gate on Thursday with giant letters spelling Amazon ahead of November's UN climate change conference in Brazil. Indigenous leader Luana Kaingang denounced what she called the genocide of her people and the harmful impact of the Mercosur trade deal. Greenpeace urged Germany to push for stronger forest protections at the summit. New York is turning food scraps and yard waste into what it calls black gold through its citywide composting program. As the Curbside Organics program nears its first anniversary, the Staten Island facility is processing up to 150 tons of organic waste daily, rising to 250 during peak season. The material is composted into nutrient-rich soil, much of it given free to schools, residents and gardens. Officials say nearly £6 million were distributed this year, helping cut methane emissions while boosting the city's green spaces. De Havilland Canada is developing the DHC 515, an next-generation water bomber designed to fight growing wildfires worldwide. Based on the iconic CL-415, the new aircraft can scoop 1,400 gallons of water in seconds and drop it directly onto fires. With 31 orders from countries including Greece, France and Canada, the first flight is set for 2027. Followed by deliveries in 2028. De Havilland sees demand for up to 350 planes as wildfire seasons worsen globally. Pop Mart's Crybaby collectibles are fueling a surge in sales, with revenue nearly tripling in the first half of the year. At the brand's World Trade Center store, blind box shoppers say teary-eyed figures are the next big trend. Pop Mart reported Crybaby revenue jumped 249% year-on-year to 1.22 billion yuan, making it one of its top 5 global lines. Executives say its message, "It's okay to cry sometimes," is striking a chord with buyers worldwide. A long-lost painting by Flemish master Peter Paul Rubens has been discovered in Paris and will soon go under the hammer. The 17th century work, Christ on Cross, depicts Jesus on Calvary with Jerusalem in the background. Auctioneer Jean-Pierre Ossanat says it reflects Rubens' Catholic faith during the Counter-Reformation. Believed missing since 1613, it resurfaced in a Paris mansion where it had remained hidden for centuries. It's expected to fetch up to €2 million at auction. NASA scientists say a Mars rock sample shows the clearest signs yet of possible ancient life. Data from the Perseverance rover revealed unusual leopard-spotted textures in mudstone from Jezero crater. Researchers say the minerals detected include vivianite and grygnite. It could only be explained by ancient microbial activity through non-biological processes remain possible. NASA called the finding a major step in answering whether humanity is alone.
Do we think this is signs of ancient life on Mars? And after a year of review, they've come back and they said, listen, we can't find another explanation. So this very well could be the clearest sign of life.
Dozens of hot air balloons have taken to the skies over the Czech city of Hradec Králové in the country's largest ever balloon gathering. Organisers said more than 80 balloons floated above the city's fields and forests during the balloon fiesta, with participants from across Europe. The event, usually held in Roskos since 2019, moved to Hradec Králové this year to mark the city's 800th anniversary. Well, you're up to date this evening, but let's, just before we go, recap the main headlines. Netanyahu vows there's never be a Palestinian state as he approves fast-tracked West Bank settlement expansion. UN General Assembly endorses New York Declaration on two-state solution for Palestine. And Egypt condemns Israeli strike on Qatar at the UN and backs Doha's response and mediation efforts. That's our news bulletin for this hour. Don't forget you can follow Q News on our social media platforms, YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, and our handle is @QNewsEGY. Thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your Friday evening.